Welcome back. You're still watching the lifestyle segment on The Weekend Show. Everyone talks about how children are the future of tomorrow and how youths have a brighter tomorrow. But the reality, as we have seen it, is that the older generation keeps holding sway and taking leadership position. And the older that we, the younger people, and some of us are not even young anymore, get, we still find out that there's almost no space. And so I'm always interested and passionate about seeing young people take space in the right spaces. And Core Africa is one of the organizations doing something like this. This June, there's the All Country Conference 2025 in Nairobi, Kenya, where 1,000 change makers from 10 different African countries will be coming together to talk about innovation, entrepreneurship, employment, and how we can keep young people engaged and position them for a better future in the world globally. Joining us, we have Dr. Samora Otieno, Chief Program Officer at Core Africa, on community-led, youth-driven development and Pan-Africanism. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How is it in Nairobi today?
So far so good. The weather is quite warm, nicely. Getting into the cold period, but today it's quite a good day, actually. Thank you. Where you are?
Abuja is fine. I remember being in Nairobi, and you do have some very good ways of preparing beef and steak, and that's something which always stays at the back of my mind. I remember going to Carnival, and it was such a great experience.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Why?
Nama choma is a big thing for us.
Yes, that's what it's called. So let's talk about young people and what you're trying to do. Everyone
Yes.
speaks about young people when it comes to filling a space, as opposed to recognizing the fact that the world economy right now is being driven by young people. In a time where the global structures and what we call the establishment is failing across board, young people are taking the lead in innovation, in entrepreneurship, in entertainment and different spaces. So tell me what Core Africa is doing and why the focus on young people.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. So Core Africa is a Pan-African organization that facilitates young people to support communities in what we call community-led development. But it's not just community-led. We're also very keen on it being community-owned. So in a sense, we really want to put the community at the center of everything that we are doing. We work with the young people, recognizing that they have that potential. As you rightly pointed out, they're breaking barriers in a lot of ways. And as you said when you're doing your intro, yes, we've been told about the youth being the leaders of tomorrow, but the time has come now, as we're saying, they're actually pushing to say that they want to take some of those leadership roles now. This is something that Core Africa recognizes, and so our programming model is around putting them at the center of everything that we do. As I mentioned, we are in 11 African countries. Not in Nigeria yet, but Nigeria is our next country. We've already started the process, so hopefully in the next couple of months, we will be opening our office there. What we do is we identify young people after college, so these are early graduates, people just before they get into the work environment, and then take them through some training. And what is unique about our model is then we deploy them to these rural communities and they live there. It's about being immersed in those communities, being immersed in their ways of doing things, being part of them and living with them. So we deploy them into those communities for a period of up to 1 year. And then during that time, we engage with them, integrate with them, but most importantly, is just facilitating. So we're not going there to help them sort their problems. We're just facilitating them, helping them with some basic skills around human-centered design, for instance, about what we call asset-based community development, and then helping them to understand how do we prioritize, what are some of those facilitation skills, how do we decide, how do we listen to all the voices as we're coming through, determining what the community needs are from a development perspective, and then let the community design the solutions to their problems, to their development needs. The key thing about this asset-based community development approach is saying even the poorest amongst us have something to offer. Even in that poorest community, whatever their need is, they'll say, okay, our contribution could even just be our land. Our contribution could just be, because we have young people and there's a lot of digging that's required, that's what our contribution is going to be. So what we're very keen to do as an organization and through this model is shifting that traditional mindset of, we have a problem and we are waiting for somebody to come from outside to help us do it. So that's really what we are looking at. how are we looking at youth and doing this? Is saying the youth that we are taking through this, helping them. We are growing them, giving them some very personal sort of development skills that they're able to work with. A lot of the youth, when I've spoken to some of our volunteers, they're saying, we were very shy. I couldn't even speak in my class. But now I find myself sitting in front, not just people, but community elders, and they're all listening to me. And, at the end of my service, because that's what we call this volunteering period, the community is able to say, thank you so much. Because of you, we've now been able to address a particular challenge that we're having. So we're looking at it, not just the youth that we are working with. So these are our volunteers, but also saying, as you pointed out, 60% of our population is the youth. So in the communities that we are working, we're also seeing a significant proportion of the youth in these communities. So even as we train our youth, we're also training them how to engage and how to support the youth that they're going to be working with in the community.
Okay, Dr.
Thank you.
Samara, I think that's really impressive and well done for what you and Core Africa is doing. But we've noticed that young people have led activism globally, from the Hong Kong protest to the NSAS protest in Nigeria. And we saw what also happened in Kenya around the tax bill a couple of years ago, where activism has actually led to policy changes and it has shaped the narrative for some governments. We also see what's happening in the Sahel with Burkina Faso, Niger, and the likes. But most people, and I would say this around Africa, they still look at what young people do in activism as something that remains on the internet. And so the question is, how do we get it away from our devices to actual impact on the street? And it doesn't always have to be about protesting, and which is where volunteerism comes in. However, volunteering it's not the best aesthetics for most people. The rewards are almost non-existent besides the impact. And these are young people who are looking for jobs, who are looking for money to eat, for food on their table. How do we go beyond activism on our phones to actual impact, but also, as sad as it is to say, for some people, they would ask the question, what's in it for me? And so why
No,
should young people
thanks.
be encouraged to volunteer, basically?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. You raised two very important points there. One is on just the evolution of activism and, of course, on the volunteerism. If I may just start with the activism first, and I agree with you. We're seeing renewed passion. I'm based in Nairobi, and we are now coming to almost the anniversary of what we would consider the Gen Z revolution of last year, which in a lot of ways was really a wake-up call, right? And even just for the Gen Z themselves, to just the realization that, wow, we have so much voice. When it all began in Kenya, they were dismissed, oh, these are keyboard warriors. And then we saw that actually they ended up, in a sense, getting what they wanted. They were opposed to the finance bill, and actually the president ended up sort of suspending it. So in a sense, they got what they want, and that has really emboldened them. And we recognize this as Core Africa. And what we're looking at is then how do we convert this passion into practice? And for us, the most important thing in this is in providing the platform for that conversion to happen. To move that passion beyond, as you pointed out, sort of the keyboard, the digital space, into actual policy work. We look at this as part of our commitment and our vision for systems change. And we look at systems change through two approaches. One, and these two approaches are actually complementary. That in one hand, we're saying there is your traditional top-down approach when you talk about policymakers and decision makers and what role the youth can play. And as I said, as we support these youth, as we give them some of this training, we're also providing them with some of those leadership skills. At that community level, they're already engaging in that policy conversation when they meet with the local chief, when they meet with the local community sort of leaders. So there's already that engagement at that point, but also empowering them, providing them with more platforms, including the conversation we are going to be having at the ACC that I hope we'll be able to get some time to speak about at the end of it all. So looking at how do we support them to act part of getting to that platform. The first, the top-down approach of it. The second one is through this mindset shift, which I see as our bottom-up approach to policy change. It's also saying that there's that policy around the community's expectation, the community's understanding of their role in that big policy ecosystem. And so our volunteers, through their work, through their facilitation skills around empowering the community to take ownership of their destiny is also contributing through that systemic change. So we also see that as a way of contributing to see. So it's not just activism. Actually, these people are listening to you. These communities that you're working with, the youth in those communities, but even the older people in the communities are listening to you as a volunteer. So some of those changes that you want to have, you started at that point. One of the key things that we've learned in Kenya was, the Gen Zs, because most of them were that, they used this, they went back to their communities and they were trying to simplify some of these technical financial things to their own mothers and to their own people in their villages. And that really had a big impact. So we're looking at it from just, changing this, providing this platform to shift this activism from just sort of online and passion to actually real life practice in those two different ways.
Dr.
You
Samora,
talked about,
okay,
sorry.
yeah, okay, go on. That's okay.
So I don't know. I wanted to talk about volunteerism as well, but
Yes.
if you have any question
Now, I
on
wanted to
activism, we
ask,
can
so
take
for
that.
volunteering,
Yeah.
how do we actually ensure that more people get into it? Look, in places like the United States, philanthropy gives people tax breaks. So there is a reward system of sorts. But in most cases, the programmatic areas around them are not tailored for the African youth. And so a community which needs maybe potable drinking water, you come and tell them you need to teach them computing. And after 1 year, that disappears. For the young
Yes.
people actually volunteering, back to what I asked, why should they actually do it when they haven't even got means to survive for the day?
Exactly. And so I was coming to that. Thanks so much, Andy. Yes, for volunteerism, we see volunteerism as a gateway to empowerment. In the context that you provided, you have a lot of young people. There's no job opportunities. There's few job opportunities that exist. They're being asked for experience. And where do you get that experience? So we see this really as an opportunity, as a gateway to that empowerment. So you just finished school. It's an opportunity for you to go and contribute and do something else. And actually, from the experience that we've seen, it's not just an act of charity. It's not just about giving back, supporting the community. I've spoken to volunteers, alumni, we call them after they finish their service, who, when you ask them what drove them to this, and they say it was from that charity mentality, that charity perspective. I wanted to go and help the community. But then they say at the end of it all, I realized that the community helped me more than I helped the community. So, and that's really what we're trying to show here is it's really an opportunity for you to develop further. You have a whole year as you're still looking for a job, but this is an opportunity at the end of that 1 year, it changes your CV significantly. You can now go to employers and say, for the last 1 year, these are the things that I've done with the community, and that, is definitely going to put you at a much better place than somebody who's just coming out of school and then trying to look for jobs. But also as Core Africa, we have what we call the post-service pathway. So after these volunteers have finished their service, their 1 year with the community, we have different support structures that we have in place to see how we can help them transition into the next phase of life. We support, for instance, with scholarship. We have our program that we call the Matching Scholarship Project that supports people who want to continue with their education. The other track that we support is on entrepreneurship. We talked about the lack of jobs. And so we have a provision that, people who want to get into that business stream who think, what, I'm not cut for employment, but I have all these business skills that we can support them through mentorship, actually even through capital injection for those who qualify. There are some criteria that they need to meet. We support them with some training as part of de-risking them to make sure that we give them the best chance of success. And then for the majority of them, we also have support into employment. So, we bring in a HR expert, we bring in other people who can just help them to get into that workplace. So we are not just finishing with them when they're done with their service, but thinking, how do we actually support them? We are looking at creating this pool of Pan-African leaders that are going to be sort of the next leaders as when it comes to development, but also based on the personal skills that they're getting, we feel they should be in a position to just
Dr. Samara, I
hit in
think
all
you've
sectors of
answered
life.
that
Yeah.
apt in a very succinct way. Now, just before I let you go in 2 minutes, I wanted to ask you, and we always have this conversation about while empowering young people and the likes, there's still the gender parity gap. How important is it to address it? And in your closing, tell us how people can find out more about this conference which you have between the 16th to 20th of June in 2 minutes, please.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, so I agree with you. And gender parity is a big issue. It affects access to education, and we know access to education has impacts on access to livelihood, and most importantly, just the voice that we are talking about. And so for us, we are looking at this from an equity perspective, making sure that we actually even having what we consider responsible affirmative action is where we are going out of our way to just make sure that, especially because most of the African communities, the girl child has remains quite underserved. So we're going out and thinking, how do we make sure that we actually encourage the women volunteers? How do we make sure that we provide better opportunities for women now for women? So that's something that we're doing very proactively. As far as the all-country conference is concerned, we have that, as you said, coming up in June. It's an opportunity for us to have this intergenerational conversation as well as cross-cultural, looking at bringing people from different countries to just learn from each other's experiences and see how we can move things forward. We have this on our website, and we're also doing this through our social media platform, just profiling this and just promoting it. So we'll share that after this, if it hasn't already been shared, so that you can also share it with your viewership. Thanks, Andrew.
Dr. Samara Otieno, Call Africa, thank you so much for joining us on the Weekend Show. We wish you all the best with what you have planned coming up, and hopefully when you also start working in Nigeria, we will be here to support you. So all the best and well done on what you're doing. Do have a blessed weekend, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you so much, Andy.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
Dr.
weekend.
Samara.
Bye.
Talking about young people, besides the fact that we do have conferences, we have workshops, and we have other activities to keep young people engaged and encouraged, it always boils down to how can we also live a life. I'm very much about living for today. You know how we say this life now one. But besides that, with all the problems which we face in the country, in Nigeria, how are we unwinding? Last month, or this month actually, was Mental Health Month. What are we doing to actually defrost, to unplug? One of the things which Nigerians are great at, in the past we used to be called the happiest people in the world, is being able to have fun regardless of the circumstances. With our next guest, we'll be talking to you about something exciting happening in Abuja tomorrow. See you shortly after this break.